A white cop accused him of shoplifting. Jordan Blake never thought gift shopping could turn into a nightmare. But the moment he walked into that high-end jewelry store, all eyes were on him. He didn't steal anything, but minutes later, the store manager whispered, a customer pointed, and Jordan, a black teenager, was left humiliated and alone. What he didn't know was that the setup ran deeper than he thought. Why was he really being targeted? And how far would they go to protect their lie? Watch until the end to find out. Subscribe now so you never miss stories like this. Jordan Blake was shaking uncontrollably, but it wasn't the wind that made him shake. It was fear. Just minutes ago, he was in the jewelry store, full of hope, looking for a birthday present for his mother. He'd been saving for months, skipping school lunches, picking up weekend shifts. He wanted to make his mother proud. But now his heart pounded with panic as Officer Riley's hand tightened on his arm. "Stay there," the white cop barked. Holding him like a criminal, Jordan tried to pull away. His voice choked. "I didn't do anything, sir. I swear, please!" But Riley wasn't listening. The crowd had gathered, phones out, whispers, judgments. "You think you can just walk in, take what you want, and walk out?" the cop said. Jordan's eyes widened, tears welling up. "I didn't steal it. Check the cameras." But that was the point. He knew they wouldn't, because no one wanted the truth. They wanted a suspect, and to them, a black teenager had to die, and Nervous Eyes was the perfect one. He tried to break free, twisting, desperate, yelling for help, for someone, anyone, to speak up. The security guard tightened his grip from the other side. "He's resisting!" someone shouted. Jordan's legs kicked wildly as he cried, "I just wanted a necklace for my mom. I swear I didn't take anything." But his voice was swallowed by the rising chaos. No one believed him. He could see it in their faces. The woman who pointed at him inside the store, Mrs. Langston, looked proud now, her arms folded. The store clerk, who barely greeted him, was nodding to police like they'd done the right thing. No one saw the terror in his eyes. No one saw the truth. Jordan's heart pounded louder than the crowd. He thrashed harder, screaming now, raw from the fear of what might come next. But they forced him down. On the sidewalk, hands behind his back. The cold metal of the cuffs bit into his wrists. "You're making it worse for yourself," Riley growled. "Just be quiet." But Jordan couldn't. His cries filled the air. "I didn't do anything! I didn't do anything!" A tear rolled down his cheek, mixing with the dirt from the ground. He thought about his mom. Her birthday was tomorrow. She'd be waiting for him, waiting for a gift, waiting for a son who was now being thrown into a police car. As the door slammed shut, the sound echoed inside him. Jordan sat in the back seat, shaking uncontrollably, cuffed and powerless. He tried to make sense of it. He thought maybe if he said it enough, someone would believe him. "I didn't do it. I didn't do it." But no one was listening. Officer Riley didn't even glance at him. He was already talking into the radio like the case was closed. Jordan stared at the passing buildings as they drove. Every corner of the city blurred by, but none of them looked like safety anymore. His chest ached. His soul ached. At the station, they booked him like a thief, took his fingerprints, snapped his photo. The flash burned. Jordan blinked, stunned. "Can I call my mom?" he whispered. But they ignored him again, tossed him into a holding cell. The metal door clanged shut behind him. Alone in the tiny room, Jordan sank to the floor, head in his hands, crying harder than he ever had in his life. He felt like his whole world was crumbling and no one cared. Hours passed, maybe more. Jordan lost track of time. Every sound outside the door made him flinch. Every footstep made him hope someone would come and say, "You're free." But it didn't happen. Not yet. When the door finally opened, Jordan looked up, eyes swollen. A man in a suit stepped in, holding a file. "Jordan Blake?" he asked. Jordan nodded weakly. "I'm your public defender," the man said. "There's been a complaint of theft, a necklace. They say you took it from the display." Jordan's mouth fell open. "But I didn't even touch it." The lawyer sighed, flipping through papers. "They claim you were acting suspicious. One customer pointed you out. The footage is missing." That word hit Jordan like a punch. "Missing?" he repeated. "How does a jewelry store not have working cameras?" The lawyer didn't answer. He just sat, watching Jordan like he wasn't sure what to believe. Jordan leaned forward, gripping the edge of the bench. "Please, I walked in with my money. I told the lady I wanted a gift for my mom. I looked at a blue necklace, and then people started whispering and watching me. I got scared, but I didn't take anything." His voice broke again. "I swear on everything." The lawyer nodded slowly. "We'll do what we can." But Jordan saw the doubt in his eyes. That same doubt he saw in everyone's eyes. The lawyer left, and Jordan curled up in the corner, feeling more alone than ever. By morning, the story was already out. Social media had picked it up. Black teen arrested for suspected theft at luxury store. Some called him a criminal. Some called him a victim. But none of them really knew what happened. Not the pain. Not the fear. His mom came. She was shaking when she saw him. "My baby," she whispered, hugging him through the bars. Jordan clung to her like a lifeline. "I didn't do it, Mom. I just wanted to make you happy." She held him tighter. "I know, baby. I know." That was all he needed. Just one person to believe him. Eventually, they let him go. No charges filed. "Not enough evidence," they said. But the damage was done. His school had heard. His friends were asking questions. Some looked at him different. Some stopped talking to him altogether. Jordan didn't feel free. He felt ruined. Weeks passed. The pain didn't. But something inside him changed. He stood taller, spoke louder. He shared his story online. He wanted the world to know what it felt like to be accused without proof, to be judged by skin, not by truth. People listened. Some even apologized for not speaking up when they saw him crying on that sidewalk. And Jordan didn't stop. He turned his pain into purpose. Now Jordan speaks at schools. He talks to other black kids about their worth, their power, their voice. He tells them not to let fear win. "They can try to take your name," he says, "but they can't take your truth. If you're still here, thank you. Thank you for standing with Jordan. His story isn't just his. It belongs to every person who's been silenced, judged, or mistreated because of how they look. And if you believe stories like his need to be heard, subscribe to our channel now. Help us spread awareness, speak truth, and build a world where no one has to say, 'I didn't do it,' just to be seen." Jordan Blake thought being released from the police station meant the worst was behind him. But he was wrong. Ever since that awful day when he was arrested in front of a jewelry store for a crime he didn't commit, nothing had been the same. No matter where he went, he felt those stares, the suspicious glances from people who had seen the video online or read the half-true articles. Suspected thief. That phrase clung to him like a shadow, even after all charges were dropped. He was 70, just a kid. But the world no longer saw him as innocent. They saw a threat. They saw trouble, and Jordan could feel it every time he walked into a room. At school, it started subtly. Teachers who used to greet him with warm smiles now gave him tight, polite nods. His math teacher, Mr. Glenn, stopped calling on him during class. The coach, who once encouraged him to try out for varsity, now avoided eye contact. One afternoon, in the cafeteria, a group of students laughed too loudly behind him. "You gonna steal my fries too, Blake?" one of them joked. The laughter that followed wasn't playful. It was cruel. Jordan stood up, his tray clattering to the floor. His eyes burned, but he said nothing. He just walked out. Alone. He started skipping lunch, stopped showing up to gym. His grades slipped, and even though his mother begged him to talk, he just shook his head and said he was fine. But he wasn't. Every night, Jordan stared at the ceiling, replaying the moment he was thrown to the ground, the flash of the cuffs, the way people stepped aside like he was dangerous. He started having panic attacks in his sleep, waking up drenched in sweat, gasping for air. His mom would rush in and hold him until he stopped shaking. But neither of them had the words for what he was going through. One afternoon, Jordan walked into the corner store near his house to buy a drink. The owner, a man who had known Jordan's family for years, stiffened the moment he entered. "Leave your bag at the front," he said coldly. Jordan blinked. "Why?" "New policy," the man replied, without looking up. Jordan glanced around. Two white teens were browsing the candy aisle, both with backpacks still slung over their shoulders. Jordan's chest tightened. He placed his bag at the front and walked to the fridge, grabbing a bottle of water. As he approached the counter, the owner didn't smile, didn't speak, just watched him too closely, scanning each movement. Jordan's hands trembled as he reached for his wallet. He walked home with tears in his eyes, the water bottle unopened in his hand. He felt humiliated, betrayed, unsafe in places that used to feel like home. When he got back, his mother was sitting at the kitchen table, her fingers nervously tapping her coffee mug. She looked up and gave him a tired smile, but even that was fading. She had been dealing with fallout, too. Her job had started restructuring, and suddenly she was no longer needed. They said it had nothing to do with the incident, but she knew better. Their landlord left a note on the door one morning. "Late rent again. Last warning." Jordan had overheard his mom crying in her bedroom after getting off the phone with a bill collector. Everything was falling apart. One Friday, he stayed after school to meet with the guidance counselor, not because he wanted to, but because his mom had begged him to. The counselor, a white woman named Ms. Evans, smiled politely as she opened his file. "So, Jordan," she began, "it looks like you've missed quite a few classes lately." Jordan nodded, not meeting her eyes. "I just been going through stuff." She cleared her throat and offered a practiced look of concern. "I know things have been difficult since, the incident. But maybe this could be a chance for growth. A teachable moment." Jordan felt his stomach drop. A teachable moment? He clenched his fists under the table. "I was arrested for something I didn't do," he said quietly. "People stare at me like I'm a criminal. I didn't ask to be taught anything." Miss Evans shifted uncomfortably. "Still," she said, "we all have to find ways to move forward." That night, Jordan punched his pillow in frustration. Was everyone pretending this wasn't a big deal? Did no one understand what it felt like to lose everything for just existing in your skin? Days passed. Then weeks. Jordan tried to disappear into the background. But one day, things got worse. Much worse. He was walking home from the library, one of the only places that still felt quiet, when a police cruiser pulled up beside him. 2 officers stepped out. "Hey!" one barked. "Stop right there!" Jordan froze, heart pounding. "What did I do?" he asked, voice shaking. "You match a description," the officer said. "Backpack, black hoodie, jeans." Jordan's breath caught in his throat. "Again?" He raised his hand slowly. "I just came from the library. I got a book in my bag. Please, you can check it." But they didn't care. They forced him to the sidewalk, patted him down roughly. Cars drove by. One slowed. A woman took out her phone. Another recorded from across the street. Not again, Jordan thought. Not again. When they finally let him go, saying it was a mistake, he couldn't feel his hands. His legs shook. He walked home in silence, entered the house, and sat on the floor of his room. He didn't speak for hours. His mom found him there. He looked up at her with hollow eyes. "I don't want to go outside anymore, Mom. I'm scared." She cried. And this time, so did he. Jordan withdrew completely after that. Stopped going to school, wouldn't answer his phone. Friends stopped calling. His mom tried everything. Therapists, support groups, nothing helped. One day, he turned on the TV and saw a clip of himself being thrown into the squad car months ago. The news anchor called it an example of racial profiling, but the comments online were ruthless. Shouldn't have been in the store. Probably stole something before. Look at his eyes. He looks guilty. Jordan closed the laptop and didn't turn it back on. But the universe wasn't done testing him. One morning, he and his mom were served an eviction notice. They had 2 weeks to leave. His mom had no job. He had no options. They packed what little they could and moved in with an aunt across town. The room they shared was small, cramped, no privacy. But it was all they had. Jordan lay on the mattress at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how life could unravel so fast. He had done everything right. He studied hard, stayed out of trouble, loved his mom, wanted to buy her a necklace. That's all. But now he had nothing. No school, no home, no friends, no hope. And still the world expected him to be okay. It wasn't until one rainy afternoon that something shifted. He was walking by a community center when he saw a flyer taped to the glass. "Youth, speak out. Share your story. Help end racial profiling." Jordan stared at the paper for a long time. Something inside him stirred. Maybe this pain could become something. Maybe his voice still mattered. He walked in. That night, he stood in front of a small crowd. His hands trembled. His voice cracked. But he spoke. "My name is Jordan Blake. I was arrested for a crime I didn't commit. And it destroyed my life." He told them everything about the store, the school, the stairs, the fear, the night he didn't want to live anymore. And people listened. Some cried. Some stood and clapped. One woman hugged him after. "You're brave," she whispered. "You're not alone." Jordan started speaking more, visiting schools, talking to lawmakers. His name, once tied to suspicion, was now tied to truth. He didn't forget the pain, but he used it. And the world slowly began to listen. If you're still here, thank you. Jordan's story is real. His pain is real. And so is his strength. If his journey moved you, please subscribe to this channel. Share this story. Help shine a light on the truth. Because Jordan Blake isn't just one boy. He's every voice that's ever been silenced. And now it's time we listen. Jordan Blake stood in front of the mirror in the small, cracked bathroom of his aunt's apartment, staring at a reflection that felt foreign to him. His eyes, once full of life and curiosity, looked tired now. Hollow. His shoulders slumped under the invisible weight of everything he had been through. And yet, there was a flicker of something in his gaze. Something that hadn't been there the month before. A spark. Not rage, not even hope, but resolve. His chest rose slowly as he took a deep breath. It had been weeks since he'd spoken at the youth event at the community center. Weeks since he stood trembling before a room of strangers and told them how the world had tried to break him. He hadn't forgotten how his knees nearly gave out, how his hands had trembled, how the words had almost caught in his throat. But he also hadn't forgotten how they listened, how they clapped, how some of them cried. For once, someone heard him, not as a threat, not as a suspect, but as a young man in pain, trying to breathe through all the weight. Since that night, something inside Jordan had changed. He started showing up again. Not to school, he still couldn't go back there. The memories were too sharp, the whispers too loud. But he showed up to the center, every week. And soon they asked him to help organize the next event. Then they asked him to speak again. He didn't hesitate this time. He didn't tremble. He took the microphone and let the truth pour out. He told the crowd how it felt to be seen as guilty before he was even allowed to speak. How he had wanted to disappear. How the hardest part wasn't the arrest or the headlines, but the silence from people he thought would stand by him. Teachers, friends, neighbors. He told them how his mom lost her job, how they were evicted, how he spent nights shaking from fear and days numb from sadness. He told them how he didn't eat for days, how he almost gave up, how he almost quit everything, but didn't. And when he finished, there wasn't just applause. There were people lining up to talk to him, shake his hand, thank him. A teacher from another school hugged him. A young boy said, "You made me feel brave." An old man whispered, "I saw the video. I should have spoken up. I'm sorry." Jordan nodded through the tears. It didn't erase what he'd been through, but it mattered. Every voice, every apology, every show of support chipped away at the cage of pain that had trapped him for so long. But the fight wasn't over. One night, Jordan got a call from his friend Marcus, one of the few who still checked in on him. "Hey, man," Marcus said, his voice tight. "There's a meeting tomorrow. School board's voting on funding for new police contracts, and they don't want any disruptions. Thought you should know." Jordan's stomach tightened. Disruptions meant kids like him, voices like his, stories they didn't want to hear. But Jordan had a voice now, and he planned to use it. The next evening, Jordan stood outside the school board building with over 50 other students, parents, and activists. Some held signs, others chanted. Jordan stood silently, holding a poster that read, "I was profiled, I was arrested, I was innocent." When it was time for public comments, Jordan walked into the boardroom, heart racing but feet steady. The room was full, faces of power behind polished desks, eyes guarded behind glasses. As he stepped up to the microphone, silence fell. "My name is Jordan Blake," he began. "I was arrested for something I didn't do. I was humiliated. I was broken. And you want to give more money to the people who did this to me?" His voice grew stronger. "I'm not here because I hate cops. I'm here because I was treated like a criminal for walking into a store. I was 17. I had dreams. I wanted to buy my mom a necklace. And instead I was thrown in a squad car and made to feel like I didn't belong anywhere. Some board members shifted in their seats. One cleared his throat. Jordan didn't stop. This isn't just about me. This is about every kid who walks around with fear in their chest. Every kid who's told to stay quiet when they're hurting. Every kid who's taught that their skin is a reason to be watched. The room was quiet when he finished. One woman near the front wiped her eyes. Another clapped softly. And then more joined in. Jordan stepped back, his body shaking, not from fear, but from the energy he had poured out. He walked outside, the cool night air filling his lungs, and for the first time in months, he felt powerful. But change never comes easy. A week later, someone spray-painted "liar" on the community center's outer wall, right next to the flyer advertising Jordan's next speaking event. His aunt found the word first and called him in tears. "They know what you're doing," she whispered, "and they don't like it." Jordan stared at the vandalism. The letters were huge, angry, red like blood. He stood there in silence, then walked inside the center, picked up a can of white paint, and covered the word stroke by stroke. That night, he stood in front of the crowd and said, "They tried to shut me up again, but I'm still here. I'm still talking, and I'm not going anywhere," when his courage caught fire. Soon, Jordan was invited to speak at rallies, schools, and even City Hall. Each time, he poured his truth into the microphone, letting every scar, every tear, every ounce of pain turn into purpose. He worked with youth groups, helped create a resource line for kids dealing with trauma. Even started a small podcast called Jordan Speaks, where he invited teens to share their stories, unfiltered. And for every voice he amplified, for every truth he uplifted, he felt his own healing grow stronger. Still, not everyone supported him. He received threats online, anonymous messages saying he was race-baiting, a thug looking for sympathy. His aunt got nervous. His mom begged him to take a break, but Jordan couldn't. He told them, "I'm doing this because I couldn't breathe for months, because I was scared to walk to the corner store, because I was almost erased, and I won't let that happen to anyone else." And even when the fear crept back in, even when the memories haunted him, he kept going. Because Jordan wasn't fighting just for himself anymore. He was fighting for the little girl who cried when her brother was arrested, for the mother who watched her son be handcuffed in front of his school, for every black kid who walked into a store and wondered if they'd walk out with their dignity intact. And today, Jordan needs you. Yes, you, the person reading this right now. If you've made it this far, if you've followed his journey from the moment he stepped into that jewelry store to now, press the like button. Not for clicks, not for views, but for Jordan. To say, "I hear you, I see you, I stand with you," because every like, every comment, every share is a sign to him that his voice matters, that his fight wasn't in vain, that the world still holds room for truth, for justice, and for healing. So go ahead, click that like button right now. Let Jordan feel your support. Let him know his pain wasn't ignored, his courage isn't unnoticed, and his journey, no matter how broken, is inspiring change, one story at a time. Because Jordan Blake isn't just a name, he's a movement, a voice, a symbol of resilience, and your encouragement could be the strength he needs to keep going tomorrow. Let's stand with him. Together, Jordan Blake vanished. Not from the world, but from its spotlight. After months of speaking out, rallying, advocating, and becoming the unexpected voice for youth injustice, Jordan disappeared from the public eye without warning. No new podcast episodes. No more community center speeches. His last social media post had simply read, "Some truths can't be spoken yet." And then silence. The world that once clung to his every word began to wonder. Where did he go? What happened to the boy who refused to be silenced? But what no one knew was that Jordan had stepped into something bigger, far bigger than anyone imagined. It started with an envelope. No stamp, no address. Just the words, "For Jordan Blake," scrawled in black ink, slipped under his aunt's front door one rainy morning. Inside was a photo of a child, black, maybe 12, with fear in his eyes. On the back, just one sentence. "He's next." And a phone number. Jordan stared at the photo, heart pounding. Something about it felt urgent, real, like the panic in the boy's eyes had traveled through the paper and grabbed Jordan by the throat. He called the number. A voice answered. Deep, shaky, and afraid. "Is this Jordan?" it asked. "I need your help. They're taking kids, framing them, the same way they came for you. Only worse, they're disappearing." Jordan froze. "Who are you?" "They'll kill me if I say, but I've seen the files. It's not just profiling anymore, it's bigger, organized, hidden in plain sight." Then the line went dead. That's when Jordan stopped being just a voice and started becoming something else. He packed a backpack, told his aunt he was staying with a friend, but really, he followed the trail. Quietly. The photo had a school emblem on the kid's collar. Jordan traced it to a private academy on the edge of the city. He posed as a volunteer mentor and spent 2 days observing. Nothing obvious. But on the 3rd day, he saw the boy. Sitting alone. Silent. The same fear in his eyes. Jordan approached during recess. "Hey," he said gently. "You okay?" The boy flinched, looked around, then whispered, "You shouldn't talk to me. They'll see." "Who will?" The boy just pointed, toward the school office where 2 security guards stood, laughing. Their badges gleamed. Their eyes, when they met Jordan's, didn't laugh. They watched. Jordan left that day with chills crawling down his spine. He went home and did something no one expected. He broke into his own past. He returned to the precinct where he was once booked, posed as a student journalist, and asked for a tour. They let him in, smiled, showed him around. But what they didn't know was that Jordan had memorized blueprints from a public city record website. While the officer spoke about community outreach programs, Jordan slipped away, down a side hall, into a restricted room. There, he found the file. Case 44487, Jordan Blake, suspected theft. But that wasn't what stopped his breath. Inside the same cabinet were dozens of other files, all labeled flagged youth. Most were black or brown. Many had mugshots, despite being under 18. The notes were chilling. Keep under surveillance. Likely to reoffend. Quiet. Possibly hiding something. Jordan snapped pictures fast. Every file, every photo, every lie. But then, footsteps. Fast. Heavy. He ran. Down the hallway, through a service door, into the alley behind the station. He didn't stop until he was 2 miles away, bent over behind a bus stop, heart slamming like a war drum. When he finally reached his aunt's place, he couldn't speak. He just showed her the pictures. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Jordan, what have you done?" What had he done? He'd uncovered something that wasn't just wrong. It was calculated, cruel. A secret list of kids marked for surveillance, suspicion, and setup. And suddenly, he understood. His arrest wasn't a mistake. It was part of something, a system. He had been chosen, watched, labeled long before that jewelry store bell ever rang. And now, he was watching them back. Jordan knew he couldn't go to the media. Not yet. Not without being discredited, buried, silenced all over again. So he did something bold, risky, wild. He disappeared again. This time, into the cities where the names on the files lived. He rode buses, slept on couches, interviewed families, recorded stories. Every town he visited had another victim. A boy expelled for being a threat with no proof. A girl arrested after a false tip. A teen who had vanished after being questioned by school resource officers and never returned. Jordan documented it all, sometimes with his phone, sometimes in his notebook. He created a map, red pins marking where it happened. The pattern was undeniable, but someone noticed. He began receiving texts from blocked numbers. "Stop digging. You're in over your head. You're not untouchable." He changed phones, traveled light, told no one his location. And yet, he kept going. Until one night in a motel room outside Charlotte, a knock rattled his door. He didn't answer. He climbed out the bathroom window and ran through the woods barefoot, scraping his legs on branches. Behind him, the knock became pounding, voices yelling, tires screeching. He slept in the woods that night, curled beneath a fallen tree, his backpack wrapped in his arms like a shield. The next morning, he emailed everything he had to 4 trusted mentors, lawyers, activists, one journalist who had believed in him from the start. Then, for the first time in weeks, he posted online, "I have proof, a list, stories, names. This isn't about me anymore. It's about all of us. Stay ready." The post went viral. Support poured in. Comments, messages, people offering food, rides, safe houses. But the threats came too, worse than before. So Jordan made one final move. He returned home. Quietly. Slipped into the back of the community center during a town hall event. When the host saw him, they gasped into the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, Jordan Blake is here." The crowd stood, applauded. Some cried. Jordan stepped to the stage. "I've been gone," he said, voice cracking. "But I wasn't hiding. I was learning, listening, digging." He paused, reached into his bag. "And now, I'm revealing." He held up the files. "This is the proof. The system targets us, labels us, tracks us. I found the list. I found the kids. I found the ones who didn't make it home." Gasps echoed. Jordan laid the documents on the podium. "We don't need permission to demand justice. We need each other. So I'm asking you, right here, right now, don't be silent. Be louder than you've ever been, for the ones who can't speak anymore." The video of that moment was streamed live. And now, you're watching it. You're here, at the edge of Jordan Blake's journey. After he fought lies, ran from danger, stood in the shadows, and came back stronger. But Jordan isn't done. His story isn't over. There are still questions, still dangers, still truths waiting to be exposed. So now, it's your turn. Comment below if you stand with Jordan. Type, "We believe you." Type, "Keep going." Type, You are not alone. Because your voice matters. Because Jordan's next step depends on support like yours, not just to feel seen, but to stay safe, to stay strong, to keep fighting. Let's fill the comment section with love, with truth, with hope. Let's make sure Jordan Blake and every kid like him knows they're not fighting alone. Absolutely. Below is Idea 5, developed into a 1,600-word paragraph, written as an emotionally touching, suspenseful continuation of Jordan Blake's journey. It reveals the full truth of what he experienced, from racial discrimination and being falsely accused to the painful risks he took to uncover the deeper conspiracy behind it. It recalls the past, weaves in previous ideas, and uses heartfelt, passionate language that makes the audience feel his pain, his courage, and the resolution of his struggle. Jordan Blake wasn't supposed to survive this. Not the lie, not the fall, not the silence that came after. The world had already made its judgment the day Officer Riley slammed him against the concrete for a necklace he never touched. That day, his only crime was walking into a jewelry store while being black. He'd gone in with joy in his heart, trying to find the perfect gift for his mother's birthday. He came out in handcuffs, and from that moment forward, the world didn't see Jordan Blake the same way. The teachers who once called him promising started calling him disruptive. The neighbors who once smiled now double-locked their doors when he walked past. That moment, those 5 minutes on a sidewalk, surrounded by whispers, judgment, and disbelief, broke something in him. But even more painfully, it awakened something else, something burning, something brave. He had begged them to check the cameras. He cried out that he didn't steal anything. But no one listened. No one believed. And that disbelief, it clung to him longer than the handcuffs ever did. It followed him into classrooms, into grocery stores, even into his dreams. It made him afraid to breathe, to speak, to exist in spaces where his skin alone felt like a threat. His mom lost her job because her boss didn't want that kind of attention. They were evicted. Jordan dropped out. Depression wrapped around him like a chain. But even at his lowest, even when he curled up in the corner of a borrowed room at his aunt's house, staring at the ceiling and wondering if he'd ever feel safe again, he kept hearing one voice, his own, trembling, saying, "I didn't do it." And he hadn't. He hadn't taken anything, except the first step toward something no one saw coming. After he was released, Jordan tried to move on. He tried to forgive, to forget. But the injustice didn't let him go, because just when he was trying to rebuild, another kid got arrested. Then another. And they all looked like him, all young, all black, all suspected. That couldn't be a coincidence. So when a stranger sent him an unmarked envelope with the photo of a scared boy and the words, "He's next," Jordan knew. This wasn't just a series of isolated events. It was a pattern, a system, a setup, and he refused to let it continue. He tracked down the boy in the photo, found him hiding behind silence at a private academy in another part of town. "They're watching me," the boy whispered. "If I talk, I disappear." That sentence struck Jordan like thunder. It echoed through his ribs because he knew what it felt like to almost disappear. And that's when he made the choice. To risk everything. Jordan snuck into the police department where he'd once been processed, not because he wanted revenge, but because he needed answers. What he found shook him. A locked file cabinet labeled "Flagged Youth." Dozens of names. Kids. Black, Latino, even some biracial students, all tagged, tracked, followed. Jordan's own file was in there, under potential offender. No criminal record, no proof. Just his name, his age, and a warning label. "Watch closely." He took photos. Every single page. Heart racing. Sweat rolling down his spine. He didn't know if he would make it out, but something inside him whispered, "Even if they catch you, they won't bury you in silence again." He escaped through a maintenance door, bolted through alleys, and collapsed on a park bench, gasping for air. He had the truth now, and the truth was fire. But fire spreads. He started connecting the dots. Every coincidental arrest, every false report. It was all tied to a network of corrupt officers, school administrators, and insurance fraud tactics. Remember the necklace Jordan was accused of stealing? It was already reported missing weeks before he entered that store. And the woman who had pointed him out? She was married to a local judge whose name appeared in multiple cases where young black teens were mysteriously charged without evidence. Jordan pieced it together, photo by photo, document by document. But the more he uncovered, the more danger followed. He began receiving threats, anonymous calls, emails telling him to shut up and disappear. And one night, someone tried to make sure he did. A motel room in North Carolina. He had been interviewing a mother whose son had vanished after a school security officer questioned him. The walls were thin. The air was thick. Jordan felt it before he heard it. 3 heavy knocks on the door. Then a voice. "We know you're in there." He didn't wait. He grabbed his phone, his notes, climbed out the back window barefoot, and ran into the woods, branches slicing his arms, tears mixing with blood. He spent the night hiding beneath a collapsed tree, his breath trembling against the dirt. That morning, he emailed everything to lawyers, reporters, community activists. He had risked his life for these files. He wasn't letting them die in the dark. And then, he reappeared. He stepped onto the stage of the same community center that had once saved him from silence. He held up the files like holy scripture. "They tried to erase us," he told the crowd, his voice cracking with raw emotion. "But I found the list, I found the stories, and now I'm telling them, because if we stay quiet, they win." And the room erupted. People clapped. Some wept. They saw not a boy, but a warrior. Scarred, but not broken. Shaken, but not silenced. Jordan's actions sparked a movement. Protests ignited in front of City Hall. Teachers began resigning from schools tied to the Flagged Youth program. Whistleblowers came forward. National news picked up the story. Investigations were launched, arrests were made. Mrs. Langston, the woman who falsely accused Jordan, she was indicted for conspiracy and insurance fraud. The police chief resigned. The judge who signed off on dozens of questionable warrants, suspended pending review. And Jordan? He was offered awards, scholarships, interviews. But he turned them down. Because this wasn't about being celebrated, it was about being believed. In a final press conference, Jordan stood tall, wearing the same hoodie he was arrested in, the one that once marked him as a thug to the world. But now, it was a symbol, a statement, that he survived. "I was arrested because of how I look," he said. "I was accused because I was convenient. I was almost destroyed because I spoke the truth. But I kept going, not because I'm fearless, but because I was tired of being afraid." And now, dear listener, you know the full truth. You've walked with Jordan from that sunny day outside the jewelry store to the darkest night in the woods. You've seen how racism nearly stole his future, how silence nearly broke him, and how courage, painful, blistering, bloody courage, became his only weapon. Let's flood the comments with love. Let's not just watch stories like this. We must respond. Because stories like Jordan's aren't fiction. They are reality. And people like Jordan, brave, broken, but still standing, are out there right now, risking everything to make this world a little more just. Stand with him, stand for him, and let's never stop. Jordan Blake had never forgotten the sound of that jewelry store bell, the soft chime that welcomed him in with the promise of kindness, of a gift for his mother, of a normal day in a world that so rarely offered him one. But that sound, once harmless, now echoed through his memories like the strike of a gavel. It was the beginning of everything: the fear, the shame, the handcuffs. The moment the world no longer saw him as a boy, but as a suspect. He hadn't stolen anything. He hadn't even left the store. And yet Officer Riley stood outside waiting, cold eyes locked on him, hand on his gun. "Empty your pockets." That demand changed his life. It wasn't just the words. It was the tone, the assumption, the judgment. It was the way no one stopped it, the way people stared, the way one lie shattered his future and left pieces of his soul scattered across sidewalks, courtrooms, and social feeds. He had been 17, a good student, a quiet boy, full of love for his mom. He'd wanted to surprise her with a necklace, something blue, her favorite color. Instead, he surprised the city with a story it didn't want to believe. A black boy wrongfully accused. Again. And just like that, his name became a headline, his face a mugshot, his future blurred behind walls of suspicion and systems designed to bury voices like his. He tried to speak, to explain, but his voice was drowned out by people who had already made up their minds. That night, he sat alone in a cold police cell, staring at the floor as tears slipped silently down his face. No one had called his mom. No one had asked for his side. When he was finally released, no charges, no apology, he stepped into a world that looked the same, but felt entirely different. The looks were colder. His school counselor said he might be a distraction. His mom lost her job. She cried in the kitchen when she thought he couldn't hear. His little sister asked why he wasn't smiling anymore. He didn't have the words to answer. But even in the quiet, even when he felt invisible, something inside him stirred. It began with a whisper, just a low voice on the other end of an untraceable call. "You're not the only one. They've done this before, and they'll do it again unless someone stops them." The voice was gone before Jordan could respond, but it left something behind, a burning need to know why this had happened to him, and who else it had happened to. He couldn't sleep. He started searching, researching, reading every case in his city that felt like his, and what he found made his stomach turn. A pattern. The same officer. The same woman. The same store. Different kids. Mostly black. All accused. All cleared. But all scarred. He went back. To the store. To the scene of the crime he didn't commit. He watched from across the street, for hours, then days. That's when he saw her again, Mrs. Hawthorne, the well-dressed woman who had pointed him out to security the day he was arrested. She wasn't a customer. She was always there, whispering to staff, watching, smiling. That smile chilled him. Something wasn't right. So he did something no one expected. He took a risk. He broke into the police precinct, not through the front door, through a side window he'd seen cracked during one of his court-mandated check-ins. He waited until night, slipped inside, navigated through dark halls until he found the room with the old metal cabinets, files, records, evidence. And there, under a drawer labeled Juvenile Watch, was a manila folder with his name on it. Jordan Blake, potential repeat offender. No charges, no convictions, just suspicion. And below his file, dozens more. All black. He took pictures of everything. And then he ran. But this wasn't just about him anymore. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a system, a deliberate targeting of youth based on race. And at the center, Mrs. Hawthorne, the wife of a judge, connected to the police, linked to the jewelry store, the same woman who had filed multiple insurance claims for theft. Jordan traced the money, the reports, the payouts. It was a scam, a cover. And he had found it. That truth was dangerous. He couldn't go home. Threats began pouring in, anonymous messages, photos of his mother. His school records were leaked, altered to make him look violent. His principal called him a liability. He had no one left but his courage. So he left. He traveled from city to city, meeting other families, other kids who had faced the same fate. He recorded them, documented every word, every tear, every wrongful arrest. He slept in bus stations, on couches, in churches. He lost weight, got sick. But he kept going. Because for the first time, his pain had purpose. And when the files were complete, when the evidence was undeniable, he came back. He stood on the stage at the community center. His hands shook as he lifted the folder. "They told you I was guilty," he said, voice cracking. "But I wasn't, and neither were the others. They used us, framed us, for money, for control. But not anymore." He laid the evidence bare. Names, faces, payments, a web of corruption that reached the courts, the police, even schools. The crowd was silent. Then, an eruption. News crews arrived. Lawyers, investigators. The FBI opened a case. Mrs. Hawthorne was arrested. The officer who targeted Jordan was suspended. The store was shut down. The school board launched a reform initiative. But justice doesn't heal wounds overnight. Jordan still flinched when he heard sirens. He still avoided mirrors. Still carried the weight of what could have happened if he hadn't spoken out, if he had stayed quiet, if he had let the system win. But he didn't. He chose to risk everything. And now, he's asking you to listen, to remember the boy who walked into a store with love in his heart and walked out in handcuffs, to remember the night he slept in the woods, clutching evidence that could end his life or change it, to remember how he faced the darkness not because he was fearless, but because he was tired of being afraid. So if you've made it this far, if your heart broke when you learned what Jordan suffered, if your chest tightened knowing how close he came to being erased, if you felt the injustice in your bones, then please leave a comment below. Tell Jordan you believe him. Tell him you're proud. Tell him he matters. Because his story is not just his. It belongs to all of us. And your voice? Your voice is how we make sure this never happens again. Jordan Blake stood on the steps of City Hall as the morning sun crept across the marble, casting a soft glow on the faces gathered below him. Cameras clicked. Voices murmured. But all he could hear was the echo of his younger self, the trembling boy who once stood in front of a jewelry store, hands raised, heart racing, tears threatening to spill, accused of something he didn't do. He had been 17, unarmed, full of hope, and they tried to break him. But now, as he looked out across the crowd, a crowd not of suspicion but of solidarity, he realized just how far he had come. This was the final chapter. Not of his pain, but of how he turned that pain into something powerful. Into something that might save someone else. Behind him stood city officials, civil rights attorneys, youth advocates, teachers, and families, many of whom had walked beside him through the storm. Jordan took a deep breath, the weight of everything he'd carried rising to the surface. 2 years ago, he began, voice steady but soft, I was arrested for a crime I didn't commit. Not because there was evidence, not because someone saw me do it, but because I was black. Because I looked like someone who might steal. Because someone decided that my presence in a jewelry store was suspicious. And just like that, everything changed. The crowd was silent. My school turned its back on me. People who once smiled looked away. My mom lost her job. We lost our home. And I lost myself. For a while. Jordan paused, eyes glistening. But even in the darkest nights, there was something that refused to die. A small voice that said, You know the truth. Don't let them bury it. And he didn't. Jordan recounted the moments when he risked everything, sneaking into the police precinct to photograph secret files, uncovering a system that targeted innocent youth, connecting the dots that led back to Mrs. Hawthorne and a network of insurance fraud, racism, and cover-ups. He spoke of the night he ran barefoot into the woods to escape people who wanted to silence him. He shared the faces of the other teens he'd met along the way, victims like him, who never had the chance to speak, who were still trying to heal. Some were there in the crowd, their heads bowed, tears in their eyes. I used to think my story was just mine, he said, placing a hand on his chest. But it belongs to so many. To every kid who walks into a store and feels eyes burning holes in their back. To every mother who gets the call that their child's been arrested and knows, deep down, it wasn't justice. It was judgment. And to every person who has ever asked, why do I feel afraid in places where I should feel safe? This is for you. The mayor stepped forward and announced new reforms. The disbandment of the Youth Surveillance Initiative, mandatory bias training for law enforcement and school security officers, funding for youth support programs led by community members. We failed Jordan Blake, she said, but today we begin to make it right. There were cheers, applause, cameras flashing. But Jordan didn't feel triumphant. He felt something deeper. Peace. He had done what many said was impossible. He had taken a broken system and held up a mirror to it, forcing it to see its own reflection. And in doing so, he gave others permission to rise. But this isn't just a victory for Jordan. It's a lesson for all of us. Because the truth is, what happened to Jordan is still happening. Somewhere, right now, another teenager is being followed in a store for no reason. Another child is being labeled aggressive for raising their voice. Another parent is comforting a son who just got stopped for matching a description. The names change, the towns change. But the pain is familiar. And unless we change something in ourselves, in our hearts, in our systems, in our silence, it will happen again. That's why Jordan's story matters. Not just because it ended in justice, but because it didn't have to happen at all. So what can we learn from Jordan's journey? First, never underestimate your voice. Jordan was just a teenager. No degree, no badge, no platform. But he had the truth. And he used it. Whether it was speaking at a community center, holding a microphone with shaking hands, or whispering to a child who thought he was next, Jordan chose to speak, even when it hurt, even when it scared him. And that courage? That was the start of everything. Second, don't wait to be ready to do what's right. Jordan didn't have a plan when he started. He didn't have backing or strategy or lawyers. He had pain and a question. What if I could stop this from happening to someone else? That was enough. He followed that question across city lines, into police stations, into courtrooms and onto stages. And step by step, he built something unshakable. You don't need to be perfect to make a difference. You just need to begin. Third, and this is the hardest, forgiveness is part of healing, but so is accountability. Jordan didn't set out to ruin anyone's life. He set out to reclaim his own. And in doing so, he demanded that those in power face the consequences of their actions. But when the officer who arrested him finally apologized, broken and ashamed, Jordan didn't spit back anger. He offered a hand and said, "Do better. Start now." That's strength. That's power. That's what real change looks like. And finally, we are all responsible for what we allow. When we ignore racism, when we downplay profiling, when we shrug off stories like Jordan's as isolated incidents, we become part of the problem. Silence isn't neutral. It's permission. So let Jordan's story stir something in you. Speak up. Interrupt the bias. Advocate for the voiceless. Ask hard questions. Choose justice, even when it's uncomfortable. As the ceremony ended, Jordan walked through the crowd, not as a symbol, not as a story, but as a young man who had survived the unimaginable and turned it into a movement. People hugged him, thanked him. Some just placed a hand on his shoulder with tears in their eyes. He smiled gently. He wasn't seeking praise. He was offering something deeper. Proof that healing is possible. Later that night, Jordan sat alone on a rooftop, legs dangling over the edge, watching the city lights flicker. In his lap was a notebook filled with names, kids who had reached out, messages from parents, plans for the future. "This is just the beginning," he whispered to himself. "There's still so much to do." And there is. So now we turn to you. Yes. You. If Jordan's story moved you, if you cried when he ran through the woods with a folder of evidence clutched to his chest, if you clenched your fists when he was called a liar, a thief, a threat, if your heart swelled when he took the stage and turned his pain into power, then please, don't let this moment pass quietly. Leave a comment right now. Tell Jordan you believe in him. Tell him he's not alone. Tell him his story changed something in you, because your words matter. And your support? It keeps stories like this alive. And if you haven't already, hit that like button to show your love for Jordan and for every young person who's been told they don't belong. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story that brings truth to light and courage to the front. We share stories not just to be heard, but to heal, to build bridges, to hold hands across the distance. And if you're still reading this, you're part of that healing. So let's keep going, together, with truth, with compassion, with the kind of bravery Jordan Blake showed us all is possible. This story may be ending, but the change it started is just beginning. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing. And thank you for being a voice in this movement. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, be brave, be kind, and never stay silent.